Dog rings. My doorbell for help. When I see why, I called 911. It was just after 8 on a Wednesday morning when Michael heard the doorbell ring. He sat at the kitchen table, stirring his second cup of coffee while the local news played softly in the background. A few leaves fluttered past the window, early signs of fall creeping into Ohio. Janine had left the day before to visit her sister in Pittsburgh, and the house had been unusually quiet since. He didn't mind the silence, but the doorbell surprised him. He hadn't ordered anything. No one usually visited this early. He stood, walked toward the door, and paused. The second ring came just as he reached for the handle. Same short chime. His hand rested on the knob for a moment longer than it should have. Something about it felt off. When he opened the door, he looked left and right, expecting a neighbor or delivery truck. But there was no one. Then he looked down. A medium-sized brown dog sat on the welcome mat, panting hard, its ears perked, its eyes locked on him. No collar. Just a green cloth around its neck, dirty at the edges. Its tail thumped once, and then stopped. Michael blinked. The dog didn't bark. It didn't growl. It just stared. At first, Michael thought the poor thing might be lost, but something didn't add up. The dog was clean, well-fed, and didn't look scared. It wasn't wandering the street. It had rung his bell. He looked up at the small camera next to the doorframe. He hadn't imagined it. This dog had come straight to his house and pressed the bell with its nose. The dog stood, backed away a few steps, then turned and looked over its shoulder down the street. Its body was tense now. It gave one sharp bark and looked back at Michael. There was something in that bark that wasn't aimless, not the yapping of a stray or the pleading sound of a hungry animal. It was direct, like it needed something. Michael stepped onto the porch and watched as the dog took a few more steps toward the road, then stopped. It turned again, stared at him, and gave another bark, louder this time. The neighborhood was still quiet. No kids, no lawnmowers, no barking from backyards, just the wind picking up in the trees and this strange dog acting like it had a mission. The air felt heavy all of a sudden, like the weight of the morning had shifted. Michael's skin prickled. The dog paced now, back and forth near the edge of the driveway, its body low, tail rigid, ears back. It looked at him one last time, then walked a few steps down the sidewalk and stopped, waiting. Michael glanced around, unsure why his stomach had suddenly dropped. He had no idea whose dog this was or why it was here. But something about the way it had come, how it looked at him, it made the hair on his arms rise. Something wasn't right. Michael followed the dog barefoot down the sidewalk, holding his phone in one hand and his keys in the other. The pavement was cool under his feet. A breeze tugged lightly at his jacket. The dog kept glancing back to make sure he was coming, trotting ahead just far enough to keep pace, but never too far. This wasn't random behavior. It was leading him somewhere. They passed one house, then another. The cul-de-sac curved slightly ahead. The dog turned quickly down a narrow gap between two fences. Michael hesitated at the entrance. The alley was shaded, the ground covered in leaves and the occasional plastic bottle. The dog disappeared from view for a moment, then came back into sight, tail stiff, head low. It gave another short bark. Michael stepped through. The path led them behind a small, one-story home. Beige siding, brown shutters. Nothing unusual at first glance. A sagging lawn chair sat near the back door, and a grill stood rusting on the porch. The dog ran up the steps and began pawing frantically at the door. Michael stopped several feet back. He didn't recognize the house, but it had the feel of being lived in. A garden hose stretched across the yard. There were shoes tucked neatly under a plastic bench. The trash bins were full. Whoever lived here had been home recently. The dog barked again, a higher-pitched sound this time, urgent. Michael called out, "Hello?" Silence. He moved closer, hand resting on the railing, and peered in through the glass of the back door. The curtains were mostly drawn, but a narrow gap revealed part of a kitchen. Something caught his eye on the floor, just the edge of a leg. It wasn't moving. He called out again, louder. Still nothing. The dog backed away from the door and looked at him, panting hard now. Michael's gut twisted. Something was wrong here. He reached for the door handle and turned it. To his surprise, it wasn't locked. The door gave slightly, and just as he pushed it open, a strange scent hit him. It wasn't the sharp smell of garbage or something rotting. It was sweeter, almost metallic, a thickness in the air that settled in the back of his throat. He stepped back, coughing once. His eyes watered. He didn't go in. He pulled his shirt over his nose and squinted inside. The room was still. No beeping appliances, no ticking clock. Just an eerie quiet. The shape on the floor was clearer now. A man, face down, unmoving. The dog returned to the doorway, paws on the threshold, tail wagging faintly like it was waiting for something, anything, to happen. Michael didn't move. He didn't shout. He just stared into that house, heart beating hard, unable to shake the sense that whatever was happening inside had started long before the dog ever rang his doorbell. Michael stepped back from the door, still coughing. The air felt heavy, wrong. His instincts were screaming now, not with panic, but with precision. The kind that came from years of training, tucked away somewhere deep. He pulled out his phone, tapped the emergency number, and waited. The dispatcher answered. Michael spoke clearly, quickly, gave the address as best he could, explained what he saw. A man on the floor, unresponsive. A dog had led him there. There was something in the air, he said, something that didn't smell right. His voice was calm, but his hand was shaking. The dispatcher's tone sharpened. She told him not to go inside, said responders were on their way, asked him to stay on the line. Michael nodded, even though she couldn't see him, and moved away from the door. The dog let out a low whine. It sat near the threshold now, ears down, eyes focused on the still shape inside. Michael watched it for a moment. The way it sat, quiet, patient, almost human in its worry, struck him. This wasn't just a pet reacting to chaos. It was waiting for someone to fix something it couldn't. Michael paced along the edge of the yard, phone still to his ear. He gave his name, described the house, the quiet, the smell. His breathing slowed, but the knot in his chest only tightened. He could still see the man through the glass. No movement, not even a twitch. The dispatcher asked another question, but Michael didn't catch it. His focus narrowed. Something about the whole scene was unsettling. Not loud or violent, but still deeply wrong. The silence pressed down on everything. A minute passed, then another. The dog stood again, walked halfway down the steps, and looked up at him. Its eyes were tired now. Not wild, just waiting. Trusting. Michael nodded, more to himself than anything else. He took a slow breath and answered the dispatcher's question. Told her he'd stay where he was, that he wouldn't go in. Far off, a siren began to rise. Low and distant at first, then stronger. It was coming closer, cutting through the quiet like a blade. The dog's ears perked. Its tail gave one hopeful thump. Michael turned toward the street and saw the first flash of red light bounce off the mailbox. Relief mixed with tension in his chest. He stepped into the driveway and waved as the fire truck came into view. The engine roared, tires grinding to a halt just feet away. Firefighters jumped out, already geared up. One of them ran toward him, asking questions. Michael pointed to the back door, told them what he saw, what he smelled. The firefighter gave a sharp nod and motioned to his team. The dog didn't bark. It just sat quietly near the porch, watching the men move with purpose. Michael stood off to the side, the sirens now fading, the air still heavy, the tension still climbing. Something inside that house had gone terribly wrong. And somehow, a dog had been the first one to notice. The firefighters moved fast. Two of them pulled on masks, grabbed tools, and headed straight for the back door. Another stayed behind, speaking into his radio, his eyes scanning the house like it was a puzzle he'd seen before. Michael stood near the side fence, heart pounding, watching the dog, still calm, still waiting. The moment the back door opened, one firefighter paused, then turned his head sharply and motioned to the others. Whatever hit them inside confirmed what Michael had already felt. Something invisible filled that house, something dangerous. The dog stayed just outside the doorframe, refusing to go back in. even as its body trembled with anticipation. Minutes passed. Not many, but they stretched. Michael gripped the wooden fence rail with both hands, his knuckles white. In all his years, he'd never seen an animal act like this. Not just alert, not just loyal. Something else. Something almost knowing. When the first firefighter emerged, he wasn't alone. He carried a man, mid-30s, shirt twisted, legs dragging. His face was pale, mouth slightly open. Another firefighter followed close behind, setting down a bag, kneeling beside him. They began checking vitals, working quickly but without panic. Michael didn't move. He heard one of the responders say something. Low, clipped, professional. Then another voice answered, louder this time. Breathing, weak but steady. Michael's shoulders dropped slightly. The dog let out a low, broken sound, almost like a sigh. Then it stepped forward, closer to the man, but stopped just short of touching him. Another firefighter emerged next, pulling off his mask. He spoke directly to Michael. "You called this in?" Michael nodded. The firefighter looked at the dog, then back at him. "That dog's the reason this guy's alive." Michael didn't answer. He just looked at the man on the ground, still unmoving, chest barely rising. Then he looked at the dog, who now sat just a few feet away, head tilted, eyes fixed on the man's face. The firefighter continued speaking. Said the inside of the house had been full of something. Said the levels were high, dangerously high. That it didn't take long. Could have happened overnight. He didn't need to explain the rest. Michael already knew. One of the medics placed an oxygen mask over the man's face. His fingers twitched. A name was mentioned. Connor. The man's name was Connor. Lived alone, according to one of the neighbors who had come out to see what was going on. Michael watched as the medics prepared to load him onto a stretcher. The dog stood as they lifted him, walking slowly beside them as if it had done this before. Not a sound came from it, just steady steps and tired eyes. As the stretcher was rolled toward the ambulance, the dog stopped, looked up at Michael, and blinked. Michael didn't say a word. He just stared back, the weight of the moment settling in his chest like a stone. Something inside that house had nearly killed a man, and a dog had saved him. By late afternoon, the house had fallen quiet again. The emergency trucks were gone. The neighbors had returned indoors. Michael stood on the sidewalk out front, watching the last of the paramedics pull away with the man in the back of the ambulance. The dog, still without a leash, still without a sound, stood beside him, calm now, almost peaceful. A fire captain walked up, clipboard in hand. He thanked Michael again, but said it was the dog who deserved the credit. Said if it hadn't been for the dog's actions, the man wouldn't have made it. Michael listened, nodding slowly. His eyes never left the dog. Later that evening, Michael sat in the waiting area of the local hospital, sipping from a paper cup of weak coffee. He didn't know what made him come. Habit, maybe. Or curiosity. Or something deeper. A nurse eventually stepped out and waved him in. Connor was awake. Thin oxygen tubes ran across his face. His skin was pale, but his eyes were open and steady. He looked confused at first, then grateful. Said he didn't remember much. Just a headache the night before, then waking up in a hospital bed. Michael told him everything he knew. Connor closed his eyes for a moment, then asked about the dog. They brought him in too, Michael said. No injuries, no signs of distress, just exhausted. He waited at the back of the ambulance the whole time, never once tried to run off. Connor smiled faintly, said the dog's name was Scout, said he'd rescued him from a shelter last spring. They'd told him Scout was sharp, smarter than most, quick learner, stubborn in the best ways. Michael looked at the young man in the bed, and then down at the floor, where Scout now rested quietly beside the chair, head on his paws. The pieces began to click together. The alarm in Connor's home had chirped for days, low battery warning. He'd meant to fix it. He'd forgotten. The furnace, an older model, had developed a crack in the heat exchanger. By the time the gas spread through the house, Connor was asleep and defenseless. Scout hadn't been. The dog had nudged him, barked, pawed at the door. And when none of it worked, Scout found a way out through the back and crossed several yards to the only house with a light on inside. Michael's house. Michael leaned down and rubbed Scout's head gently. "Smartest dog I've ever met," he said. Scout's tail thumped once against the tile. As Michael stood to leave, he glanced back at the hospital bed, then at the quiet dog beside it. A simple animal, one most people might have overlooked. But that morning, Scout had done what no human could. He saw danger coming, and he rang the doorbell.